Are you looking at getting a new reptile and you're not really sure how to pick the right one? Let's talk about 10 ways to make sure you're picking a healthy reptile. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Zoe. Most people know me as 𝘎𝙪𝙨𝙞𝙨. And in honor of me finally signing up as a vendor for some reptile expos in the fall with my business Herpetology, let's do an expo type of video. So we're going to talk about how to pick out a healthy reptile at an expo, but these tips can apply to any scenario where you're looking at getting a reptile. So tip number one, we're going to get a bit invasive. So tip number one, check the holes. Check the holes and check the eyes. So we're talking up in the facial region. Is it an animal that has heat pits? Check the mouth, check the nose, check the eyes. We're looking for everything to be clean and clear. We don't want any bugs. We don't want any bubbles. We don't want mucus. We want it to be clean and clear. Number two, because it kind of goes with checking the holes, check the cloaca. You want to make sure this cloaca is clean. You don't have poop stuck to it. There's no bugs. There's no buildup of anything, no crusties. A nice clean cloaca. I feel like this is just turning into a comedy video, but I am dead serious. Check the cloaca. Number three, making sure this animal doesn't have bony protrusions, which can be a sign that it is underweight. Not a sign that it's underweight. It just means it's underweight. So if it's a snake, making sure that it doesn't look like this with the spine sticking up. If it's a lizard, making sure that like its hip bones aren't jutting out massively. You just want a nice body shape that doesn't look bony and ill. Number four, this is a big one, especially if you're buying an animal in an area where there's a lot of animals, like an expo or a pet store, and that is making sure that they are clear of mites. Now, the best way to do this, check the openings and check the cloaca. Like we had already talked about. When I said look for bugs, I was talking about mites. Mites are usually going to gather in places like the nostrils, the eyes, the cloaca. So checking those areas for mites, but also taking your hand, running it along the animal and checking your hand to see if you see any mites on your hand. That's a good way to check as well. So this might be a good time to mention that you might want to keep some hand sanitizer on you for these events. So if you do handle an animal and check it, you can sanitize after. Trust me, you do not want to bring home an animal with mites. It is a nightmare. Number five, check for any retained shed. Is it a lizard with shed stuck around its toes? Is it a snake that has its eye cap still intact? Are there just like random bits of shed stuck to its body? Some animals are just poor shedders. It happens. It can be a certain morph that has an issue with shedding. Sometimes improper shedding can be a sign of improper husbandry. Now, things happen. Sometimes animals just have really bad sheds. So when it comes to buying an animal, if there is shed retained, maybe use that as a red flag, because sometimes that could mean that there could potentially be other issues at play if it's a retained shed due to, say, poor husbandry, because poor husbandry can lead to things like respiratory infections. And again, you don't want to have to deal with that, because that means dealing with vet bills. Also, if it's like a breeder showing off their animals, if they couldn't care enough to get the shed off to make their animal look good before trying to sell it, that's a red flag for the breeder. Tip number six, if you're looking at a turtle or tortoise, looking for pyramiding. Now, pyramiding is when the scutes on the shell are raised up kind of like a little pyramid. This is a red flag. This means the turtle or tortoise hasn't been provided with the proper nutrition, maybe the proper husbandry. There are several different reasons for pyramiding. Pyramiding is typically a sign of something being wrong. So if you see massive pyramiding, leave that, go find a breeder that has healthier looking animals. Number seven, this one is very important, looking for kinks. Kinks in their spine, kinks in their tail. This can sometimes be a sign of metabolic bone disease. Either they have it right then and there, or they had it at some point. You don't want to have to deal with metabolic bone disease. That is not fun. Metabolic bone disease more or less means that their bones have gone to mush. I did a lot of videos on metabolic bone disease in my beginning YouTube days. So if you want to learn more about metabolic bone disease, I will put that video right there. but it is not a fun time. So we're looking for nice straight spines, nice straight tails. Again, looking for an overall healthy looking animal. If they have kinks, that could be a sign that maybe they weren't provided with UVB and they should have been. Maybe they were provided poor nutrition, they weren't given enough calcium. So you just want to avoid those situations altogether. Number 8, we're looking for wounds, burns, scabs, any sort of exterior wound that we can see on this animal. Sometimes a wound or a scab on something like a snake can be a sign of live feeding. I would personally avoid getting a snake that eats live. Go for frozen thawed. Much better for you and the snake in the long run. You don't want to have to deal with that bills from injuries. Sometimes that can be a sign that an animal was cohabited and injured by being together with another animal. Burns, wounds can sometimes mean that they either ended up having access to their heat source and were able to touch it and burn themselves, or their heat was too high and they ended up burning themselves. So again, just signs of sometimes improper husbandry or incidents that you don't want to get into if you're getting your first animal, or any animal really. If you want a healthy animal, just stay away. Number 9, and this is a really good trick if you're at like an expo or talking to a breeder, and that is, can that breeder give you background on that animal? Can they tell you when it was born, how old it is, what it's eating, what its temperament is like, who its parents are? A breeder that knows its animals and can disclose that information to you, that is a good breeder. And the last tip, tip number 10, is that animal being alert and active, because sometimes there's things that are wrong that you can't see. Reptiles are very, very good at hiding when things are wrong. So sometimes the best we can do is just pay attention to whether they are alert and active. Are they watching you? Are they watching what's going on? Are they moving around when you hold them? Is it like holding, I don't know, nothingness? Or are they active and moving and engaged? You don't want to bring home an animal that appears to be half dead, is more or less what I'm getting at. Alright, so those are my 10 tips for picking a healthy reptile to bring home to join your family. For other reptile keepers that are watching this, if you have additional tips, leave them in the comments below so we can help out other potential keepers or newer keepers that are maybe getting more animals or getting their first animal. We're all about learning over here and helping each other out. So leave those tips in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, big thumbs up, and thank you guys for watching. As always, we'll see you for the next video. Bye!